You lied to me. You lied to everybody. What makes you so special? I'm your sister. Yes, well, that just makes you more gullible. Welcome to Here You Guys Podcast. I'm Rob, that's Liam. And this week we watched 1999's The Mummy. Now, usually we got something very good from Liam for an intro, or me just going, yeah, this movie's good or this movie's shite for my intro, try to be funny. I haven't written anything. I'm so unprepared. I'm
Lazy.
sorry, Liam.
Lazy.
So,
I mean, if nothing else, we are a very honest podcast. Basically, we haven't bothered. We don't think you're worthy of our time. So yeah, no intro this week. We're just going to talk about The Mummy, but that's fine. I've got plenty of notes about the film at least. So that's something.
so yeah, no, we watched The Mummy starring Brendan Fraser. And what I will say after rewatching this film, I'm going straight into it. This film feels timeless. This film could have been made last year. I think the effects, for the most part, still hold up. Fucking Brendan Fraser, what a man crush! 1999's Brendan Fraser.
Oh, if anything holds up, it's definitely Brendan Fraser. That's for sure.
Yeah, can you imagine? There's never been like this. Comments can never be said again. I gave Brendan Fraser this film because I liked him in George of the Jungle.
Yeah, it's a strange statement to make, and it's not an obvious jumping off point for me for him to become O'Connell, who is like the quintessential dashing hero. And make no mistake, I'm not sure if anyone has ever been more dashing on screen. You can be like handsome and suave and all these things, but in terms of being old-fashioned dashing, like Brendan Fraser in The Mummy in 1999, oh my fucking, the Barnet on him. Oh, like I was watching this film, I was like, oh, he might just have the best movie here of all time. And then I just totally forgot that Oded Fair is in this film as Ardith Bey, who might have even better hair, who might be even more handsome. He's so fucking handsome.
His long hair is awesome. It flows in the wind. It's like when he's O'Connell with the curtains and stuff going on. It's so great. But what I love,
sorry, Karen.
Sorry, I was just saying. I mean, you said was there anyone more dashing on film? It's like Errol Flynn, and then there's him. I don't think there's an in between at this point. You could argue the fact, so. Like, because everyone, like the dashing characters, base themselves on Errol Flynn. You had Timothy Dalton.
He's like the archetype for dashing characters, isn't he? Yeah,
because you had Timothy Dalton from The Rocketeer, who was Errol Flynn. You had it was like fucking Carrie Elwes.
Carrie Elwes in in The Princess Bride.
Yeah, I was going to go Robin Hood Men in Tights, but yeah.
I think the obvious one probably is Princess Bride. And he's fantastic in this, but I'm not sure he's so quintessentially handsome. And I mean, he is dashing in that film, but he's almost played dashing to a comedic level. Like they turn it up purposefully to 11, whereas this feels more naturalistic. And you mentioned the fact that this film feels timeless, and obviously his performance is part of that. And the same with Oded Fair, I mean, he's so handsome that they were supposed to, his character, because he's like the head of the Magi, and his character was supposed to be covered in tattoos. And they just suddenly decided, oh no, he's too handsome. And I wonder at what point in the process did some, like Barry, what's the director's name?
Stephen Summers.
Stephen Summers. He's coming and they're just going into makeup. And he's like, what are you doing? It's like, we're adding the tattoos. Not to that face, you fucking not. Keep I will take 2 tiny tattoos on his cheeks at most. I want that face on display and get that hair flowing, goddammit.
That's exactly what I thought. And they put the golden locks on him, just let him not the golden locks, but put the locks on him, let it flow. But my God, keep that chiseled chin. Like that dude. And we're talking about a film that has Rachel Weisz in it, for fuck's sake, and we're going straight to
Brendan Fraser. It's strange. Well, there's a problem with Rachel. I love Rachel Weisz, and she's so adorable in this. And again, that whole classical feels this film. A big part of it is the romance between O'Connell and Evie, who are they're both so charming in this film, both individually as a couple. It's one of the major reasons that this movie works so well, and why it's aged so brilliantly. However, her eyebrows, which I've never noticed before, are aggressively distracting. I put on the film, and as soon as she popped up, the first thing that popped in my head was like, the fuck is going on with those eyebrows? Have they always been like that? And I was like, you're playing up far too much. I'm getting carried away. My wife, just out of the blue, she goes, the fuck is going on with her eyebrows? I know, right? What the hell? But other than her eyebrows, she's gorgeous. Brendan Fraser's gorgeous. Oded Fair is gorgeous. Everybody looks great in a movie that looks great. And, this movie is at its best when it's being a historical albeit somewhat supernatural epic. When it's being a CG showcase, it's not always quite as good or quite as timeless. And it's a shame that returning to this film, it gets off on the wrong foot because the opening sequence is not only the worst and the clumsiest sequence in the film, but it also looks the worst by a considerable distance. So if you're going back to this and you watch the first couple of seconds, which are all set in ancient Egypt, there's a lot of CG, there's a really clumsy voiceover, and the whole thing, I'm like, wow. Like even the credits, like the opening the mummy, I was like, oh, that doesn't look fantastic either.
I believe
but then it goes to
a
shot in the desert. From then on, the movie looks almost universally fantastic. But the opening section hasn't aged great. But I'm not convinced it was ever great, if truth be told.
I believe that voiceover was added like after as well. I know it was added after. It's not like they did it on set. But because originally it was going to be, I was going to call him fucking Tutankhamun then. What was the name of the pharaoh? Imhotep. Originally it was going to be Imhotep, but they said, really, he can't do a voiceover. He doesn't speak English in a film. This would be weird. All of a sudden he's speaking Imhotep. It's like you're watching a film where the narrator is the guy that died. Like, okay, this is fucking odd. So they decided to then overlay it with Oh Dead Fair. So I think that was added quickly. That's what I believe anyway. But
no, and it feels like it was overlaid quickly. As I said, it feels clumsy, and the visuals, like this is, don't get me wrong, 1999 was that period when the CG really had like its second boom, I always think of it. It's like, obviously there was the stuff in the early 90s. We always think of like Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park. Then there was a period where like a lot of films, they added CG, but a lot of it looked rather ropey. This was that second kick where it was used with more confidence and on a wider scale. And, you know, films like this, The Phantom Menace and The Matrix all came out in the same year, and they were all absolutely cutting edge. But even this film back then, it's at its best when it works within its limitations, the limitations of the technology at the time. And the opening sequence is the only bit where it goes all in, like basically everything is CG, and it looks a bit crummy. And you get with films from like 20 years ago. Sorry, 25 years. Oh, fuck, yeah, 26
25,
years.
yeah. But I agree with you on that. But I think it's the opening and the ending that are the main CG heavy. I know Imhotep's running through this fucking film CG to fuck, but you get the opening, which is heavy CG, and then the end.
I just love the idea. I can imagine that being a quote on the movie poster: Imhotep CG to fuck. Sorry, Karen.
No, he really is, isn't he? He is CG to fuck.
He is CG to fuck.
It's the end as well, where you get the phantom chariot that runs through. That's a bit crap. And then some of the moving of the mummies, like the warrior priest mummies at the end, they looked a bit. But
and it's weird. It goes a little bit slapstick at that point as well, which is quite strange. There's a great scene where you have Brendan Fraser clearly fighting nobody, and they add the CG mummies, which is kind of good.
It looked good, but that also looked a bit ropey. Like he's punching to the left. Like when they were actually doing this on the computer, they couldn't put one of the mummies center, so he's just punched the air, and all of a sudden that mummy's head falls off. Like, okay, how does that happen?
There are hints of this film where the tone doesn't always quite land, because it's juggling a lot. Like it's juggling like horror. You know, The Mummy is historically a universal monster movie, and there are hints of horror in this film. They nailed the romance, they nailed the action adventure, but every so often, you get this with all Stephen Sommers films to one extent or another, there are moments when it slightly tips over. In this film, it only happens a couple of times, and towards the end, it's one of them where the tone is slightly iffy. It's usually the problem you get with Stephen Sommers films. I mean, this is the one film where you say, you know, it was just right. It was the middle bed, wherever it is. And I'm using a clumsy analogy here where I've totally got it wrong. But, you know, you look at his other films like Deep Rising. I know you're a bigger fan than I am.
Huge fan of Deep Rising.
We covered it on the podcast. That film I always
sorry to interrupt. No, I love this podcast, me and you, right? Where Deep Rising was covered before The Mummy.
Yeah, I know. What the fuck is wrong with this, right? It's absolutely insane. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to listen to us talk about Deep Rising, the podcast is there. A surprisingly long time ago. It was covered far too early, in my opinion. But Deep Rising is a good, fun film, but the tone's a bit off. But the big issue with that film was actually the CG. Despite only being a year before this, it's actually aged a lot worse, and that could be a budget thing. But then you get The Mummy Returns in 2001, Van Helsing in 2004, G.I. Joe in 2009, Odd Thomas in 2013. He's actually got a new film coming out, well, supposedly When Worlds Collide, which, if nothing else, on paper, sounds really interesting. Yeah. But most of his films, they all show promise, but tonally, they're all a bit all over the shop. You know, Van Helsing is a perfect example. That was really billed as this massive movie. And I love the idea of it. It's like, from the director of The Mummy, and there was the feeling with Van Helsing that if they got it right, it wouldn't have felt. It would have almost felt like a kind of sister piece to this movie,
because
but the tone wasn't right.
Van Helsing to me just felt sloppy. It felt way too CG heavy. It's like, okay, we did a bit of it within The Mummy. That's great. And I know we didn't direct The Mummy Returns, but that had more CG in it. And I'm thinking, right, let's fucking double down. Let's make everything pretty much feel. I mean, the whole film of Van Helsing felt green screened. Like, I don't think any of it felt like a set. So it was rough. But I mean,
well, that's the difference with this film. Like, this film is at its best when it commits to old-fashioned spectacle. Like, the cinematography in this film is more impressive than any of the CG, and that's not just in terms of because it was made in 1999. Like, a lot of the CG still looks, as we already mentioned, still looks really good. But when this film is really if this film was made and it was almost exactly the same, but they used physical effects throughout, it would be a great film. Like, it'd probably even age a little bit better, but obviously there are certain things that CG are required for. But I would argue that the big set pieces actually still land. Like, I'm not sure if it's the same for you, but when I think about this film, and I have quite vivid memories of seeing the trailer back in 1999. And as I said, back then, the trailers were a massive deal. Like, to bring it up again, Phantom Menace, the trailer was this huge thing. The Matrix, same thing. And with this film, I remember.
Can I guess?
Go for it.
Oh, you say this. Sorry, I was going to say Sandface. I'm assuming that's where you're going.
Sandface. I was going to use the term Sandface, but that's much more apt. We'll go with Sandface. The Sandface sequence, still to this day, looks fantastic. Yep. And I think it captures like the scale of the film. And that is one of those sequences where you're like, oh, well, CG is absolutely required for this. And it's used, despite the scale of the scene, still relatively sparingly. And that's why I think it holds up so well.
I love that. Once again, right? You've captured that perfectly. The sand face, the scale of it, everything. All I can remember from that part, Benny at the end. I love it when you had the whole sand. You bastard.
We've got to bring up Benny.
Yeah, I love Benny doing his best Rob Schneider. That's all I've got to say about Benny. I think he was creating this, but he did feel Rob Schneiderish.
Yeah, but I think he's better than Rob Schneider. I think the difference is like he's purposefully unlikable. Like, with Rob Schneider, the problem with Rob Schneider, he's always on the edge and quite often tips over into just being annoying. But I'm not sure if it's intentional. Whereas with Benny, I don't want to just keep
Kevin J. O'Connor.
Thank you very much. Yeah. When he's in this film, and the same in Deep Rising, like when he's annoying, he's supposed to be annoying.
But when Deep Rising, Santucci.
But when the comedy lands, it really lands. Like he has like 8 of the 10 best lines in this film. I love the sequence with Imhotep when he goes like full Homer Simpson, Allah Buddha Christ, I love you all, and he's pulling out all the crosses and stuff. Like every sequence between him and Imhotep is fantastic. Every sequence between him and O'Connor is like, did you bring your friends out of the desert? No, O'Connor, you are my only friend. It's like all those lines, he just absolutely nails them.
The river line. I still love the river line as well. I was going to do that, but I didn't want to start shouting and wake the neighbors.
We have all the camels.
Yeah, it looks to me like we've got all the horses. Hey, Benny! It looks to me like you're on the wrong side of the river, and you just see Benny's face. Then he kicks the water. He's so upset.
But he's great, and he just adds a bit of levity. But sorry, Karen.
He does it so well that you feel justified when that scarabs take him out, because he is such a greasy. And I love that line as well where O'Connell turns around to him and says, "What's the scam, Benny? You take him in and you leave him in the desert?" And he goes, No. The Americans are smart. They only pay me half. This time I have to bring them back. This time. How many times have you left people in the fucking desert, Benny?
What an absolute shite bag. But that is the thing. It's not just Benny either. Like another reason, we've mentioned loads of reasons why this film is aged so well, why it's so beloved. But one of the underestimated aspects of this film is just the supporting cast. It's like Omid Jalili. Like in my head, he's in this film for like half of it, as is the level of his impact. You watch it again, you're like, he's in it for like 10 minutes, but he's so fucking good. Like you absolutely remember every single line delivery. Everybody's like, well, it helps that he has one of the most memorable deaths in the movie as well. But
when he headbutts the wall.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't bad enough that he is brain eaten by a scarab. Then, for some odd reason, and there are some proper horrific deaths in this film. We mentioned that balancing act between romance, action, adventure, and horror. When they go all in on the deaths, Like, it is horrific, and I think his might be the worst of the bunch. And it's not the scarab bit, like you said, it's when he runs headfirst into a wall. There's no way you watch that and just go, God damn, man, that's fucking horrifying.
Yeah, I totally agree. Can I say as well, last week, right, we did the Predator 2 or Predator 2, and we said we could feel the sweat. We could smell the sweat in it. I don't know whether it was the fact that John Hannah as Jonathan just kept going on about it, but you could smell Warden Gad Hassan, Omar Jalali. You could smell that poor man, even after he jumped in the water. He looked like he stank. Like of like really like brie cheese, not brie cheese. What's the Stilton like or blue cheese? He had that real funk about him.
See, now you've said that, I'm going to associate him with blue cheese, and it's true because I've stood right next to him in a gym, and he didn't smell. I can't remember him smelling the blue cheese at all.
I can't imagine him smell. He probably the nicest smelling man ever, but for some reason,
he's one of like the few celebrities I've had surprise run-ins to. You know, when it's just like, because I was at the gym, obviously working out, no big deal, but then I've turned up and I've like bumped into
working
somebody.
On my guns.
And you know, when like he's not the most famous person in the world, but he is famous. And you know, like I bumped into him and I did that like horrible, like, oh my God face kind of thing, and then tried to act cool. But my immediate reaction, it was like the other like relatively famous person I've run into, and I stepped on his dog, I think I mentioned before, was Tony Shalom from, I always think of him as the guy from Galaxy Quest. And I stepped on his dog, and then I looked up and did the same goofy, oh my God, you're a famous person, and then tried to act cool about the fact that I've also stepped on his fucking dog. So yeah, it turns out I'm no good in front of, I'm good in front of celebrities once I get hold of myself. But apparently, just like everyone else, my immediate reaction is to go wide-eyed like a fucking moron, sadly. So
my one, I'm going to have to mention my one now. And it's not a big movie star, but Hugh Dennis. Mock the Week's Hugh Dennis. I think he was in Outnumbered as well. Literally bounced off me in the Tesco, the little Tesco in Birmingham train station. Like I walked around one aisle, he walked into me, bounced off me. I'm like, "Are you all right?" And he just
all this reminds me
knocked
is that
this dude over. Like, oh shit! I've just knocked over Hugh Dennis.
We need to get better celebrity stories. We need to like actively go out and find celebrities, because it's like, you know, don't get me wrong, no offense to Omar Jalili or Tony Shalhoub or Hugh Dennis, but they're not exactly the most fantastic celebrity stories out there.
Yeah, but we're not really in the places where we can say, oh, you say that, mind, being in Cardiff. I mean, lately, if I fucking stepped outside, I probably could have found Willem Dafoe, Tom Hardy.
They have been knocking around.
Forrest Whitaker. Oh, yeah, they just went to the shop. Oh yeah,
I live up in Edinburgh, so all I see is like, you know, kind of whatever comedians in August. That seems to be the thing.
I was going to say you've seen Knife Crime, but that's Glasgow. You're all right.
Yeah. Oh no, dude, Edinburgh. There are no knives. The only knives that are in Edinburgh, as far as I can tell, are the ones used to open letters. That's the kind of city I live in.
Oh la di da.
Indeed.
Right. Anyway, go back to the Mummy. You were talking about the supporting cast.
Well, yeah, no, I was saying like the supporting cast and, you know, the reasons that this movie works so well. And we've hinted at the fact, you know, this movie doesn't skimp on the horror aspects. It never forgets the fact that, you know, the Mummy is a monster. It is a classic horror character. Yeah. And if you go through like the list of movies, like we already mentioned Omid Jalili's death by scarab and then wall. There's the death by acid or pressurized salt acid is a specified movie.
Death by wall.
That's what it is, yeah.
You're right, yeah.
There's death by fire. There's death by burial alive. There's death by live mummification at the start. Like proper, you know, Imhotep and his crew, they do not die well at all. There's death by eye removal. You know, Benny's death at the end. Like there's no fucking around here. And even like the scene where O'Connell is, I was going to say about to be hung. He is hung, and you see him in the gallows fall, and he's like, oh no, his neck is not broken. And you watch it like, fucking, that is a violent ass scene for a family movie. You know, you know why though? Why is that?
Because he nearly actually died. I'm going into trivia here. I'm going into trivia. That's the first scene they shot as well, right, of the film. And the first scene that they shot of the film, they nearly killed their main star. He literally nearly choked to death his neck. Like he nearly actually. Yeah, I got it better when I get basically. Back, yeah.
So they didn't actually hang him. He didn't fall from the gallows again in the film, but he was hanging there. But like the pressure got to him, and I think he said he passed out or something, didn't he? So it was.
So there you go. So Brendan Fraser nearly died during a scene where his character is hanged. Rachel Weisz remembered he stop breathing and not to be resuscitated. And Stephen Summers is probably stood there going, "Oh my god, this is the first fucking day of shooting. Oh my god, what the fuck do I do? Who can I recast as
Yeah,
fucking?"
who would you recast? Because it's almost a shame that the sequel, like this film, had a big impact. Yeah, like there was the
Yeah,
2001 sequel, there's the 2008 sequel, there was an animated series that ran for 2 years. I had no idea about. There were the spin-offs, the Scorpion King. It kind of launched The Rock to one, as a movie star to a
yeah.
certain extent. Obviously, there were other films. There was the remake of sorts in 2017 with Tom Cruise, but we're not going to talk about that. But like when you watch this film, you thought this is like the heir to Indiana Jones. To my mind, this is the closest we have got to a film which has met the quality,
Yes,
the fantasy standards of an Indiana Jones, and in Brendan Fraser, a genuinely compelling lead. The difference here being it's very much a two-parter and more of a romance, I suppose. But it's just a shame that none of what followed, none of the sequels ever quite lived up to the quality.
Well, I don't know. I kind of prefer the sequel to this one.
Oh, really?
It feels bigger and more fun.
I didn't like the kids' story and stuff.
Oh, yeah. I get
film's much
that.
better,
The end felt really like when they get back to Jonathan knowing what the symbol for the bird was and all that shit. But what you said then about it meeting Indiana Jones, they capture the grandeur of that as well. With Indiana Jones, it's all encompassing. It travels around the world. I know this is mainly Egypt, but it feels so big. It feels
and well, that's one of the things. Like when it's again at its best, and you remove the whole CG thing, and obviously an obvious comparison is Indiana Jones. But what I often thought about, and part of it obviously is the desert, but those old-fashioned epics, like I think of Lawrence of Arabia. When I was watching it, I thought of Zulu a couple of times. It has that vibe to it, and obviously it makes it all. It always has an eye on being family friendly and making sure it ticks all the boxes as a blockbuster. But it also keeps one hand in that pot of being like, all right, this is an old-fashioned epic. And as I said, that is one of the things with Stephen Summers films, and one of the criticisms I had of Deep Rising and most of his films is that he often tries to do too much. And this film tries to do everything, but somehow it manages to pull it off, which is an incredibly rare beast. As I said, this film is all things to all people in many respects. And that's, again, one of the reasons it's so beloved. And that is so hard to pull off. To get the action, to get the horror, to get the charm, to get the romance, have it all in one place and for it to all work is almost a miracle of filmmaking. But it works here.
You know what this film is more than anything else? So fucking orange.
It's very orange.
Jesus Christ, it's orange. Like when they start getting the eclipse, super orange. When they're in the desert, fuck me, it's orange. Like, gee, pick another color.
Well, I mean, where did you go though? Because I mean, this wasn't even shot in Egypt. It was actually shot in
No, they weren't
Marrakesh
allowed, were they? Because of the
political situation at the time. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you can see, like, I went to Marrakesh last year, and one of the sequences, I think it's like when they go back to the fort where Benny brings Imhotep to, take the eyes from the American.
Wait, he already took his eyes and his tongue, didn't he? He wanted the rest of him. Like, fucking hell.
But all the eyes to take. His eyes were the worst eyes. Like, dude, why would you imagine those eyes?
Imagine Imhotep taking those eyes and then going, fuck's sake,
but I can't. Yeah, having to put glass on. Like, geez, this doesn't work. But yeah, there's a scene where it's clearly at that fort is there's like a historical university in the center of Marrakesh, and it was one of like the first higher learning centers in the region. Blah blah blah. And you can see it's clearly used in the film. So it was cool to see little bits. I'm like, oh, that's Marrakesh, whatever kind of thing. But to bring it back to that sequence where he takes the dude's eyes and his tongue. What really upset me is the opening sequence, because I find it so, not the opening sequence, the kind of horror sequence in which that guy's involved. I forget his name, the actor, or even the character, just American dude with bad eyesight. But there's a bit where they're all running, obviously. His glasses fall off, and Benny, of course it's going to be Benny, the fucking shite bag, steps on his glasses, and then he's stuck underground with and honestly, as somebody with dog shit eyesight, it upsets me and stresses me out so fucking much. And they do it brilliantly. Like, from his perspective, he does turn into a bit of an invalid when his glasses fall off. It's like he can't talk anymore, even before his tongue, but whatever. But it reminds Sorry.
He does as a fucking Velma from Scooby-Doo.
Yeah,
with my glasses. Do you know, I like
to think I wouldn't be that inept if my glasses fall off. But like I said, just to bring it up very quickly while we're talking about the glasses, it reminded me of that sequence where if you don't have glasses, it would probably pass you by. But there's a sequence in Captain Phillips where the Somalian pirates take over the ship and they've got the people, and one woman, they just go up to her and they just take off her glasses and just take off her glasses. I'm just like, you motherfucker! Like it would immediately, like like if like pirates took over the ship you're on, there's always going to be a voice in the back of your head saying, "I'm going to be the hero. I'm going to do something about this." If one of them came over and took my glasses off, I'd be like, "Well, that's me done.
Yeah,
I'm fucked. I'm useless. I'm not going to be the fucking hero of this story. Forget about it." Sorry, Karen.
No offense, right? I will say his name in a second, but no offense. Me or you are never being the hero. We stand out like sore thumbs. There's no way we're the hero in any of these situations. With your glasses, not put some contacts in, take your shoes off, put a vest on. You're still 6'9" or whatever you are at this point.
Not quite there, but surprisingly close.
And I'm 6'4" and I'm quite wide. There's no way in hell people are going to go, "Oh, do you know that guy over there? Yeah, what guy? Oh, the guy trying to hide behind the fucking lamppost."
Well, it is one of the things like you don't appreciate about being so. It's like, yeah, you'll probably never be the hero. Like certainly in one of those situations, because people will eyeball you straight away and go, "He's a bit too big. Let's make sure he can't go anywhere." And if you go missing, people are going to notice. And the other thing, like you just don't appreciate, like everyone's like, "Well, you can't be a fighter pilot or something," like or a Formula One driver, regardless of talent. You're just too fucking big.
Yeah.
The other one is what you can't be is a fucking criminal. Like you just cannot break the law because if you go into a line out, you're getting picked the fuck out. Yeah. It's just like, it's ridiculous.
Or a spy for MI6.
Oh yeah. You can never be a spy.
Yeah, because they won't take anyone over. Well, you got to be average height, so I think you got to be under 5'10", over I guess midget height, and then
midget height 5'10".
I
Said like someone who's truly incredibly tall. But yeah, no, that is the point. There are loads of things which are just closed off to you because you're too tall. Yeah, you can never be a spy, you can never be a fighter pilot. And like I said, you can never be a criminal. Don't get me wrong, I haven't got any means to be a criminal anyway. But it's just completely out of the question. It's one of those things you don't consider when you're younger. But like one day I was saying like, oh yeah, I could just never be a criminal. Like if you're on CCTV, they don't need to see your face. You're like, oh, the one who's like a foot taller than everyone else. Yeah, that's the motherfucker. Yeah. Straight to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect £200.
And for me as well. Oh, you mean the dude that got Yippee-ki-yay tattooed on the back of his leg and always wears shorts?
Oh yeah. I mean, you brought that upon yourself. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact you're already 6'4", you're a big guy, and the fact that you always wore shorts and you're covered in tattoos, it's like, yeah, forget about it.
Yeah, I've never been a criminal. Sorry, so we've gone on a tangent. Which is strange for us. We never go on a tangent.
I know, strange.
His name was Mr. Burns. They were all three Americans were Misters. So that dude was Mr. Burns.
Fantastic. How the fuck did I not know he was called Mr. Burns? That's amazing.
The one who is my kindred spirit because he just wanted every bit of bourbon. I want a shot of bourbon. I want a glass of bourbon. That was Mr. Henderson.
Okay.
And then the other dude was Mr. Daniels. Now I recognize the other dude. Mr. Daniels, the one who didn't know how to put a jacket on, which really upset me. Like, put both arms in the sleeves, dude. Why the fuck are you just doing the one, you prick?
Yeah. Well, they were clear. Did they all die? I can't remember because a lot.
Yeah, no, they all. So he. Yeah,
they died back at the fort when he comes back.
Well, no, he didn't. Did he? Mr. Sleeve guy. What was his name? Mr. Daniels. Mm-hmm. He jumps in the car with Jonathan after Jonathan does his emote.
Oh yeah, when the film goes full Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah, and then he gets pulled off the car, and then he starts shooting them all, but there's too many for them. With like 12 bullets. So yeah, they all get fucked.
Yeah, and that is a weird sequence. Like I'm not sure why, because obviously the whole thing is, and what's his name? John Hannah goes a little, and he's maybe the only character in this film I'm not particularly enamored with. Jonathan, I know he's supposed to be annoying, but the big thing is like he goes out his way to like basically read out the 10 plagues as they're happening. I don't think any of the 10 plagues are zombies. Like why? Like I get it. Like the 10th plague is boils and sores, but then they just kind of throw in, oh, they're under the power of Imhotep and they've all turned into zombies. I'm like, why? Why are these like? Yeah, it's bizarre. For 5 minutes, this film is a proper zombie film, complete with, as you said, John Hannah doing the Shaun of the Dead, Imhotep, and just pretends to be a zombie and then fucks off. But it's just like, all right, we're just being a zombie film for 5 minutes. It gets away with it, but it doesn't make any sense.
Happens as well, right? After they sand tornado themselves to Amun-Ra. Sorry, is it
Hamunaptra?
Hamunaptra. After they sand tornado themselves to Hamunaptra, are they still zombies just walking around the streets of Cairo saying Imhotep? Or
I have no idea. Surely, right? Unless like the power kind of wanes when he's not around. Maybe it's kind of like he has to be relatively close. I had no
Yeah.
idea. Well, at least they get. Speaking of Harmon After, and Harmon After is a great location for this film, if nothing else, because Harmon After just rolls off the tongue. It's just a fun word to say, Harmon
Only
After.
if you write it down so you know what the fuck it is. Yeah,
Well, there is that.
absolutely.
There is that.
Yeah.
Right. The one thing is probably about, I would say, even more egregious than the random zombie sequence in this film, is when there is a chase sequence for no apparent reason between horses and camels, and the camels win by a fucking mile. I am not having that for a second. Just because Rachel Weisz is all adorable, goes kee 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 kee, and suddenly this fucking camel is running twice the speed of a horse. Get the fuck, man! What, like that, of all the things that happen in this film, that is the most unrealistic. That was the bit beyond maybe her eyebrows. That was the other part of this movie that totally took me out of the experience. Like,
Sorry. Egregious joke. No, I just want a very egregious joke, and I might have to cut it out when I say it. But the reason why that camel went faster is because it had 5 camel toes.
oh, that is pretty egregious. Yeah, not putting that. Well, you can't cut it now. You've said it, but we'll let the the listeners decide. But that's an absolute shocker as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, the camels. But then they get to Hamnatra. Like, yes, the whole film is very orange, but what you expect? It's shot almost entirely in the desert. And the important thing is, it's a very handsome film. And we shot on the CG at the start. I would argue that the end of the film also, like, it's a shame that it's kind of bookended by its weakest elements. The opening doesn't matter so much because it's just a voiceover, just heavy-handed exposition. The ending with Imhotep isn't fantastic. The CG there doesn't look great. And there are sequences where O'Connell's fighting, for instance, and I've only really noticed it this time, Imhotep just kind of stands in the background doing fuck all to almost like a kung fu movie, where people like attack one at a time. And Imhotep just kind of stands there and doesn't really do much. Like, his big moment is arguably the sandstorm sequence, which is fantastic, but the ending isn't brilliant, sadly. So yeah,
No, I mean the ending as well felt quite rushed. In regard, and I wonder if it's because they run out of money with the
it could be, but by that point,
the mummies and stuff like that, and all the gold and the scarabs, it was just a lot towards the end.
Well, by the end as well, he's just a dude. Like, it was the reason I keep saying the fort. I think it's back to the fort when Imhotep shows up to obviously consume the rest of the American Mr. Burns. That's when the film's at its best, because the CG in those sequences where you have the mummy look fantastic, and when he's still kind of like half mummy, half Imhotep, whatever you want to say, those are the bits which look fantastic, and you're still in the horror film. By the end, he's kind of just a dude visually, and that's why they throw in the mummy warriors. As I said, that bit's a bit whatever. I just think it's a shame that this film peaks a little bit too early, and the end isn't quite as strong. But it's like it's terrible. It's just, I don't know. It just doesn't land the plane, so to speak.
Well, it doesn't take away from the rest of the film for me.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
The film is still great, and you're always going to have things like that. I mean, I can't think back. I think Aliens was probably our 4th or 5th film, and I don't know why. But the reason why is because we give Aliens 4 or 5 stars. But there's always those little things within great films that just take something away from it. And
well, I don't think this is quite in the same category as it. And I definitely
no. I mean, to be fair, I don't know why I pulled. I mean, you did it right with fucking Indiana Jones, and I've gone The Mummy or Aliens. I don't know where the fuck. Probably because everyone's going on to me at the moment about this Alien Romulus. Aliens.
Oh yeah. There is a lot. Yeah. I mean, in fairness, I've posted quite a bit. For some odd reason, I was like rewatching Alien Covenant, blah blah blah. It doesn't matter. But yeah, there are, you can still be a great film and have moments which don't quite land. And this is one of those films, as I said, the start and the ends aren't the best bits of the film, but they're still not terrible. And the only reason I really notice them is because for like an hour and a half, this film is absolutely fantastic. So you do notice those moments when it doesn't quite hit the same heights. Like nearly everything about this film is fantastic. Like, I would argue that maybe it has the best dual wielding of any film ever. When Brendan Fraser is shooting with 2 guns in this film, it just looks better than most other films. And one of the great things is he actually has to reload, which you don't get in a lot of these films.
And he does it, if I'm right in saying this, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I saw it. He does it both ways as well when he dual wields. He crosses his arms to pull him out, but he also does that as well.
It's just awesome.
Just grabs him like the gun that's on the right side. He looks absolutely fantastic in this. I'm going to go back to it. He looks like an action star. This is the same guy that 6 years ago did Airheads. with fucking Steve Buscemi and Adam Sandler, and 7 years before this did no, sorry, 5 years, 5 years before this did Airheads, and then 6 years before this did fucking we knew it as California Man, but I think people in America
Encino
knew it
Man.
Encino Man, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And
that's the thing. It's right, and he has hints of it in this film. But what I don't think, and maybe he's not had it quite the same since before or since, was that like Brendan Fraser's always relied on like a certain goofy charm. Like he's a handsome dude, but he's always looked kind of goofy. But and I don't mean that in a negative way, but he always looks like, he would lend himself well to comedies, and he always has. But in this film, I don't think anyone thought that he necessarily had this performance in him, like where he truly is a leading man. Where, like as I said, when I think of him in this film, I think of him as just being purely dashing, and he's still funny and he's charming and stuff. But above all else, he's like just super dashing and super handsome. And I'm not sure if he was ever quite the same before or after. And it's been well publicized, but he's had like a really bizarre career because obviously, as you said, he kind of started more in comedies. Then he became this action star almost for like 8 years or whatever it was, with a few comedies in between, like Bedazzled and stuff. And then there was that whole thing, and I won't go into the details, the whole Hollywood Foreign Press Association, all the sexual assault claims, blah, blah, blah. And then he kind of disappeared. He was still working, but he fell from grace in a major way. And then suddenly, obviously, as we all know, Darren Aronofsky, I wouldn't say pulled him from obscurity, but by Hollywood standards, relative obscurity, to suddenly win the Oscar kind of thing. And, the Renaissance was, upon us all. The only thing is, like, I hope it lasts. I mean, obviously, he was also in Killers of the Flower Moon, which is a pretty big deal. Yeah. But, him as a traditional leading man, he had this small window, and then for strange reasons, it just kind of disappeared. But this was the peak. And I know you feel, you're more positive on the sequel than I am. When I think of Brendan Fraser, I still think of the first Mummy film. I think that is.
Oh, no, absolutely. Like he it's the archetype for that. Like when you think of Brendan Fraser, you do think of the Mummy. Like the hair, the chiseled jaw, the look of him. He looks so good.
It's hard to get. We've mentioned it before on previous. I've mentioned on loads of podcasts. You can have dudes who are handsome and all these other things. You can tick boxes. You could even be a fantastic actor. But to have that leading man screen presence is super rare. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger is one I always think of, because Arnold Schwarzenegger isn't a great actor. He's just not. As much as I adore Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's not a great actor. But what he has is that intangible screen presence, which you can't train.
Charismatic. He is
exactly
so charismatic. Yeah.
You either have it or you don't. And in this film, he has it. And I know you're not a big fan of the movie, but Gladiator, not the 1992 Gladiator, the 2000 Gladiator with Russell Crowe, like you put him in that film and straight away you're like, that is a leader of men, that is a movie star on screen. And then you see other epics where they rely on that kind of movie star charisma, and you're like, well, this guy's good and he's a good actor, but he doesn't have the quote unquote it. And in this film, beyond the fact that he is a great actor, he looks fantastic, he also has that aforementioned it factor, which makes a big difference. And as we've already mentioned earlier, it's really easy to overlook the importance of the romantic relationship between him and Evie. And I think that's what sets it apart from films. Indiana Jones, he always has the love interest, but this film feels like more of a two-hander than those films. Like, Indiana Jones is an Indiana Jones film where he has a love interest. This movie is almost as much an Evie movie as it is an O'Connell movie.
What I thought with this film is that the love interest or the romance, it feels earned in this film. They've earned it to get to where they get to at the end. Whereas like in Indiana Jones and all that, sometimes it feels a bit one-sided. Like nobody likes it.
Other than the first one, like you would say, Marion. It worked in the first one with Marion. With the other ones, I like Willie. I don't have issues with her in the second film.
Yeah,
but they don't land in the same way. And to your point, exactly, it doesn't feel as earned as it does here. Whereas those almost feel like flings. Whereas this, and obviously we know what happens in the subsequent films. You're like, oh, those two are going to end up being married.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be them for life at that point. It feels like that's going to be. Hey, listen, you went on about Brendan Fraser. You think of him when you think of Brendan Fraser, you think of the Mummy. I want to bring back our semi-regular game, the known for on IMDb.
Oh, for Brendan Fraser.
For Brendan Fraser, yeah.
Well, it has to be the Mummy.
Yeah, ding ding.
Yeah, it should be the Whale.
Ding ding.
Added. George of the Jungle.
No.
Ah,
This is
man.
where I feel as well that these known for IMDb ones are usually updated by their agents.
Oh, I
Like,
see. It,
so I'll give you a hint, right? I'm guessing the agent doesn't want people to remember Brendan Fraser from the 90s. I'll give you that one.
okay, fair enough, fair enoh. So it wouldn't be was it like it wasn't Journey to the Center of the Earth or something like that he was
He
in
was in that,
2000.
and I thought
Yeah.
that was all right, but that's not on the list, no.
Okay, okay. Oh,
You
so it's not from the 90s. Oh, Bedazzled?
no. I was surprised at that.
Ooh, I
Yeah.
thought that would be it,
Yeah.
man. Jesus Christ. There was one he was in with, was it with Harrison Ford? I think he was in a film, something like that.
Oh, he was, wasn't
In
he?
like
But
2000 and early 2000s, he was in a film as a more serious drama. I've got
yeah.
that in my head. It's
I
obviously
know the
not that one.
extraordinary measures, but it's not that one.
That's the one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. There's a...
I'm blanking on this now.
All right then. So I'll give you so you said the
I'll
mummy, you
take
said
two. I'll take two.
yeah, you said the mummy, you said the whale. The
Mhm.
mummy returns.
Oh, yeah,
I
this
thought
feels
you
like a
might
bit
have
of a
got
cheat.
it, but you don't want to carry on. But you would never have got this one.
Mhm.
Crash.
Oh, really? Crash? Well, it did
Yeah.
win a lot of Oscars. Like it's a weird film because it's almost become famous for winning the Oscars because nobody's happy that it won the Oscar. It was one of those like everybody looks back and fucking can you believe Crash won the Oscar for like Best Picture? And
Yeah.
that's not his fault, but I totally forgot he was in it. I mean, that film had a great cast, but yeah, I would have never remembered that in a million years. Like even now
But
you're saying it, I'm trying to picture him in the film. And I can picture a lot of the other, Sandra Bullock's in it, blah, 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 but I'm like, Brendan Fraser was in that film.
yeah, he was Sandra.
Honestly, really, that's ahead of fucking George of the Jungle. Get fucked.
He was Sandra Bullock's husband.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not having that. That's one of those IMDb ones where, right, the sequel, I try not to just list off The Mummy, The Mummy Returns, The Mummy in China, or whatever the hell the third one was called, The Dragon.
No, that's better than the actual name of the film, The Mummy in China. It's like the mummy took a holiday. It was
What was it called?
Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
And that wasn't great, sadly.
No,
But
the
yeah,
mummy's on holiday.
I would have never ever got a crash. I reckon if you asked, what I always think in my head is the pointless thing. It's like if you asked 100 people to name 4 movies that represented Brendan Fraser on IMDb, I think you get a pointless on fucking Crash. I don't think anyone would say Crash, man.
For me, see, I put him. I think with honors. I thought that was a good film. And there was the one. I think it was with honors. That was the one with Joe Pesci, where Joe
With
Pesci played.
honest, do you know you're the cunt? You know when like people think they've won on Pointless, and there's like one person, and you're like, man, I thought that would fuck. Who the fuck said 4 honors? And it was you. You're the fucker when they brought up Brendan Fraser. Like, I really like to film 4 honors. You're the only person saying that.
That's the one with Joe Pesci.
Yeah,
Where,
I'm not. I'm
yeah.
not shitting on the film. I'm just saying, like, if you could pick 4 films to represent Brendan Fraser, you're like the one person who's saying that film. I reckon.
Well, because I would have pulled out Gods and Monsters as well. Was it Gods and Monsters? The one where Ian McKellen. Yeah, that was it. Ian McKellen was some sort of playwright or something, and Brendan Fraser was his gardener or something. And Ian McKellen, I think Ian McKellen.
So I would go to like Airheads before that. I'd go to well, as the Americans would call it, Encino Man, California.
Yeah.
But again, that could just be when we grew up and stuff like that. But
Oh yeah,
I was surprised by Bedazzled. I really thought that would be up there. And didn't he do a Looney Tunes movie as well?
Yes, he did.
Yeah,
Fucking hell! What a Looney Tunes back in action.
well, as I said, you see him in this film, and now we're talking about his career before and after, and it just doesn't add up. Like if you saw this film in a bubble and you were like, and you try, and someone said, "Oh, what do you reckon? Like the career he had leading up to this and the subsequent career, other than the direct sequels to this film, you would get like none of it right. Just none of it right."
Do you remember between Bedazzled and The Mummy Returns, he did Monkey Bone with Rose McGowan.
Fucking
That weird one
Monkey
with the
Bone.
animated, yeah. And
Yeah,
then,
that film sucked, dude.
oh, it was terrible. And before The Mummy, the same year, he did Blast from the Past. Remember with the
That was
was it
okay.
Alicia Silverstone? But I just remember Christopher Walken in that film because I always just think of Christopher Walken.
Well, I just think of Alicia because I had like a pretty big crush on Alicia Silverstone around that time.
Yeah.
I remember it being a big deal when it was like, oh, she's going to be in the new Batman film. She's going to be Batgirl. And then you watch the film and went, oh no, she's
Oh, bless
Batgirl.
you. The only
So bad.
the only Batsuit that didn't have nipples.
Oh my God. Anyway, are we going to end talking about this film on bat nipples? I think we might be. Are we going to move on to favorite scene?
Yeah, I think I've pretty much covered everything. Check my notes. Yeah, no, I'm good. We got everything.
Cool. Well, the obvious one, and we've already mentioned, is the desert chase, where they're eaten by Imhotep's sand face thing. Like, in terms of scale, in terms of like ticking all the boxes. I love God, what's the captain called? The drunk ass captain he's like super suicidal.
Captain Winston Havelock.
Yeah, I love him in it. Like, again, he pops in, he's there for 2 minutes. You're like, well, this dude's definitely going to die. He does with a smile on his face. I love everything about that sequence. I would also argue, we mentioned previously when Benny brings him back to cut off the glasses dude, Mr. Burns. I'm never going to forget his name now, Mr. Burns. Like the CG in that sequence is fantastic. And I think in terms of getting that balance between horror, action, retaining the romance, I think that sequence, even if it's not the most visually impressive because it's not in the desert, you don't get the same kind of cinematography. I think that maybe that section probably encapsulates the movie better than any other. But the truth is, it is the CG sandstorm for sure.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the sand face is great. The smile on Oded Fehr's face as he's flying through. When they say to like Winston Havelock, you could die, you probably die. Oh, I will? Okay, I'll help you. Like that's all great. But for me, it's the second opening. So you had the beginning within ancient Egypt, and you said
when you basically get the story of Imhotep, and you get he and his friends all getting killed. But as soon as it cuts to quote unquote modern day in the first sequence with O'Connell.
Yeah, that's right. Because you get the sweeping landscape. Then you got no hint of what's going on. You just got O'Connell looking down the gun. He's the only American in the Foreign Legion at this point. The commanders run away. Benny turns around to him and goes, "Oh, you've been promoted." And then you get the hint with Benny as well, where he's talking. You got my back, yes, my friend. And then all of a sudden, Benny fucks off. But O'Connell, you still see who Connell is as what kind of guy he is, because although Benny fucking left him, he's there saying, "Run, Benny, run! You can do." Even at the end, when Benny's about to die, he's trying to save Benny and pull Benny out of.
Well, he is like he's a bit of a dick, but he's inherently a good guy. But that's another great shot because I love that sequence because as I said at the opening, I was a little bit concerned with the CG, and then as soon as they cut to that and it had that epic scope, I was like, oh no, this film's fantastic, and the whole show don't tell. Exactly to your point. You don't need lines and lines of dialogue to explain who O'Connell is, who Benny is. It's all explained in those opening sections with hardly a word of dialogue. You're like, well, I know exactly who this guy is. I know exactly who that guy is. Show me it all on screen. Don't give, as clumsy as that opening section is with the voiceover, this is the complete opposite, where the storytelling is really like lean. The cinematography is fantastic. The scope of it's brilliant. There's no CG. The complete opposite of that sequence.
Nice CG, though, isn't it?
Well, there is a bit
because floor sand face I think looks good.
Yeah, you do get brief. Yeah. So there are. So like you said, you do get that moment, but it is fleeting and it's not the most important part of the scene of the scene. Yeah. But yeah, that's almost the complete opposite to that opening sequence. And to my mind, that's when the movie really starts. So yeah,
absolutely. That's why I called it the second opening. Because absolutely. You kind of feel, that's where it starts for us. So no, I'm going with that. I think that's good. I'm going to let you talk. I'm just going to try and close a blind because I'm just getting blinded in one eye.
Yeah, no worries. I'll do my loves and hates. I'll go through both.
I can hear you.
So in terms of love number one, unsurprisingly, great hair across the board. So we're talking about Brendan Fraser's character and Oded Fehr, just two of the best heads of hair you're going to get in any movie. Number two, the amazing cast across the board. Again, Brendan Fraser's fantastic, Rachel Weisz, but it's the supporting cast. Everybody plays their part, and brilliantly, everybody gets a moment to shine, which is fantastic. Yeah. And number three, the commitment to old school adventure despite the cutting edge CG. So the CG is still there. And again, to bring it back to the scene you talked about a moment ago, it does have the CG there, but it doesn't distract from what is a fantastically old fashioned spectacle. So those are my loves.
For me, I wrote it down as well. We seem to do this together. We got a weird fascination with hair. I love the hair in this film. His hair is fantastic. When he cuts it, and then you see the way Rachel Weisz looks at him when he goes, "Are you talking about me?" And you just see the dashing picture that he cuts a really dashing picture by there with his hair and everything.
Oh, because he's been in like the prison and stuff, and she's seen him and he's kissed her, but then she kind of almost bumps into him, and he's just the height of just like wonderful masculinity, and that's not it's just you just see him and go, what dude doesn't want to be him, when you see him in that moment. It's fantastic.
Brendan Fraser is my second. Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz together, their on-screen partnership is great.
Their chemistry is just off the scale.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But it's a pity as well that he didn't get more from this. I know he had more films, but he's an action star in this. He needs to
Mm-hmm.
be an action star moving forward. There needs to be more action films with him in it. And I think that was a missed opportunity as a massive action fan. But
Mm-hmm.
I think he's great in this, and I think them two together are absolutely fantastic. And I
Yeah.
gotta go, I because I love Kevin J. O'Connor in most of the Stephen. Well, I say I'm probably in the two Stephen Summers films I actually like. I
Mm-hmm.
think he's fucking great as Benny in this. He
Oh, he's
makes
brilliant.
you hate him. I think he's great.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say Benny stand out, Kevin J. O'Connor, but I gotta go with you and say the supporting cast. I think they all do their
Yeah.
jobs really well. I think they're great.
Yeah, but I agree with you. Like the supporting cast is fantastic, but who's the one who stands out? It's Benny.
Yeah,
Benny's the one you remember. As great as everyone else is, like you almost go like, well, obviously there's Rachel Weisz, Brendan Fraser. You obviously remember Imhotep. The next one on the list is Benny, without
yeah.
question.
Because unfortunately, okay, I'm going to go straight into hates if you don't mind. I know we
Yeah,
usually
yeah,
go with
go
you,
for it,
but
buddy. Go
I'm
for
going
it.
to go straight because John Hannah as Jonathan Carnahan is pretty much in there. He is just he's not needed. I don't know if they're trying to make him comic relief or anything, but you don't need him as comic relief when you've got Benny. So I don't know why John Hannah is in there as the inept brother. It seems a bit odd to me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, he's the only like. Don't get me wrong. I don't hate him in this film, and it's not like egregious to the point where like he ruins anything. But to your point,
yeah,
exactly. I'm like, if there's one character this movie could do without, it's probably his.
yeah. And yeah, I don't think he's egregious as well. But we say loves and hates is a big term. But when you look at this film and you start picking the barrel for hates,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
it's a bit
It's more
like
just kind of mild disappointments, I guess.
yeah,
But it doesn't have the same ring when we're talking about, oh, what are the things you love and what are the mild disappointments?
yeah,
So we'll list
yeah.
them as hates, but all with it's all relative.
The other one for me is the opening. I'm with you on that one. It just the first opening. It
Mm-hmm.
it it felt clumsy.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it was needed. Do you know what? If you just had the opening scene with O'Connell and then went on, and as you have the story progressing about who Imhotep was, that's fine. I really don't think you need. Maybe after O'Connell's running into the desert, then you can get Oded Fair's
Mm-hmm.
narration.
Well,
But do
the other
you
thing you got
really
to
need?
remember, like it's maybe different in 1999 because it's easy to look back at it now and go like it doesn't quite work and visually it's not as impressive. In 1999, a big part of it would have been impressive. A lot of people wouldn't have seen
Oh yeah,
anything
I
like
get
that.
it. Yeah.
And the only positive side of it, it does do a lot of like, all right, let's just get this bit of the story out the way, and then we just off to the race. Almost knew like the film's really eager to get to O'Connell and Evie and all that jazz, but it's like we need to explain this, so let's do it as quickly as we can. We'll put some flashy CG and we'll move on. And I agree, it's one of my hates as well. It doesn't quite work, but I can understand what they were going for.
Yeah. And Imhotep being a bit lame at the end is my last one. Like
Yeah.
he's this like I said, he can control all of Cairo, apparently,
Mm-hmm.
at the moment. He can turn the sky blood red or blood orange, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
He can do all of this shit, but he gets to the end, he gets a couple of his zombie mummies to just go ahead and do something, and he just stands there watching. As you rightly said, he just
Mm-hmm.
stands there watching. And
Yeah.
then when he gets the only thing that can happen, he gets his arm cut off and then he can put it back on. And then all of a sudden, like I said, the weird ghost chariot takes his soul away or his
Mm-hmm.
power or whatever it is, and he's just human and he just I don't know, he just kind of gives up into the water. Yeah.
Yeah, well, other than my first hate is Evie's eyebrows being somewhat distracting, and it's just upsetting because
Yeah.
they're really ugly eyebrows, and
I never noticed them. I cannot picture them now.
well, it's just they're really distracting on an otherwise gorgeous face. I absolutely love Rachel Weisz. I actually referred to her to my wife as the thinking man's crumpet. She didn't like that. She didn't care for that one bit, and I'm not sure why, but she did not care for that. So I'm not going to say the thinking man's crumpet in front of my wife ever again. I consider my wife to be the thinking man's crumpet. She's a doctor, for heaven's sake. But yeah, anyway. So Evie's
Your wife
eyebrows
doesn't listen to this
distracting.
podcast. You don't have to.
Well, no, she doesn't listen to this podcast, but she'll be in the flat somewhere. She can hear it. I'm loud as fuck, in case you hadn't noticed. Number two, and they're the same ones you picked. Imhotep doesn't do much in the final battle. Don't need to run over that again, but it's a problem. And the siege at the start hasn't aged well at all. So it's more of an issue going back to it, because if you're like, oh man, I haven't seen the Mummy for ages, your first reaction probably will be like, is this worse than I remember? You just need to get over it. Like it's 5 minutes. It's not a great 5 minutes, but nearly everything after it is absolutely off the scale. So those are my hates. Any alternative titles? This would be an interesting one.
There's a couple. I mean, there's more than there
I'm
was for
amazed
Predator.
that there were any, to be honest.
There's more than there was for Predator 2 last week, but
Okay.
they're not good. Let's just put it that way.
Well, why
So
would you change it? The Mummy. It's a brilliant title.
Denmark is mummies.
Mm-hmm.
Estonia. I don't know if this is translated. Estonia is Moomin.
Moomin? No, that doesn't
Moomin.
make any sense.
No. Do you remember the Moomins, by the
Yeah, I
way?
remember the Moomins are
Yeah.
horrendous. I
Yeah.
fucking hate the Moomins.
The
They just
weird
look
white
weird. They're like,
football
like
things on the
just
moon or whatever it was.
like
Weird.
aesthetically, just some things are just weird, and like I just never got it. Like Cabbage Patch Kids and
Yeah.
Moomins, they all in that same kind of like. I just don't get the appeal.
So India is Mommy, Mommy.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Sounds childish.
Japan has three,
Mm-hmm. Of course it
right?
does.
And they got to be different. So Hamunaptra, the lost city of the desert.
Well, that's what the video game is called. So jumping
Okay.
onto that, because I was looking up the Mummy, the video game, and in Japan, the video game is also called Hamunaptra Ushi Nawareta Sabaku no Miyako, which is a translation, the capital city of the lost desert. So
Okay.
yeah, they've fucking gone for it in Japan.
But the other one in Japan is Now My Heart's Singing of My Heart.
I mean, I can kind of believe it because Japan are mental. Like,
Japan are mental.
Well, no, if you
leave it
look
there,
at
just
like
move on. Just move on.
Japanese video games, and I'm not talking about the ones we're accustomed to getting over in the States, like Final Fantasy and Street Fighter, blah, blah, blah. If you look at the ones which are clearly made predominantly for the Japanese market, which we might see, for like the niche market, you look at some of the titles and they are fucking bananas across the board. So I get it. It happens. They love long, convoluted, nonsensical titles, often with words which are made up, whether it be in Japanese or English. They will just smash two words together to create a new bullshit word.
Yep. Where were we? Oh, Taiwan, Legend of the Gods and Ghosts.
No.
No. United Arab Emirates, The Return of the Mummy. No, I don't know if they're on about the old Boris Karloff one and they just decided, yeah, he's coming back.
Maybe, but surely you save that for the sequel.
Yeah.
Any others? Or
yeah, we got one more. Vietnam, Egyptian mummies. So you don't get it confused with I don't know, with Wales mummies or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Any facts?
Do we have facts? We do. Brendan Fraser nearly. No, I'm not going to say that one again. So in one scene, Benny is shown with a sack full of gold, which he is trying to load onto a camel. And he pulls the camel by the reins, but the camel doesn't budge. The camels all, for some reason, hated Kevin J. O'Connor. That's the trivia. That's
fantastic.
They just
well, yeah, that's it. I just love the idea that that's not the scene, but it's like the camels just won't react. They're like, we don't like this guy. It's like, well, we'll go with that. Nobody likes Benny, so this is actually even better.
Yep. With the exception of a loincloth, a few pieces of jewelry, and pasties, Patricia Velasquez was nude except for body paint, which took 4 hours to apply. So that was Anoxa in the Moon, who I didn't know was the same actress that played her in the sequel.
Oh, yeah. Indeed.
Yeah, so the opening voiceover was originally intended to be read by Imhotep. Director Steven Summers later realized Imhotep wouldn't be able to speak English and gave it to Ardeth Bay instead. The library disaster was done in one take. It would have taken an entire day to reshoot if a mistake had been made. I mean, what's really a mistake? All shelves are falling over. Did they want them to be the domino effect? If one just didn't move, would that be? I thought that would be funnier.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's either one goes and none of the others go. That works. Or they all go, as it did. That works. If like 3 of them go, that doesn't work. Like, that's the problem. Like, if it's just kind of like a halfway house. So it has to be kind of basically all or literally nothing. Like, if she goes to knock it over and it just rests against the other one, you can turn that into a comedic scene. If all of them go, obviously, like they did, that looks fantastic. Yeah, 3 go, you're like, that clearly didn't work. There's no hiding it.
The white nightgown Evelyn wore when the ship was attacked became transparent when it got wet and had to be digitally painted white during post-production so the film could keep its PG-13 rating.
Yeah,
they didn't want a wet t-shirt contest in the middle of...
No, and we wanted it because, I mean, this came out when I was 17 years old. I mean, I absolutely would have wanted it, but I can understand why they've kind of made the effort there to cover them up, as it were.
Oh, you'll like this one. Cloak lent by the British costume rental company Angels and worn by an extra in this film was discovered to have in fact been made for Alec Guinness when he played Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars.
God damn, bet you that's worth some bumps now.
Yep. And the Egyptologist was brought in to phonetically render what ancient Egyptian might have sounded like for the dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's kind of cool.
According to director Stephen Summers, Universal phoned him the morning after this movie was released and said, "We need another one," which is probably
I
why it
bet.
only took 2 years for the next one to come out.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. There's no way somebody doesn't watch this and go, "We've got something here." I
Yeah.
mean, I would argue that to one extent or another, they squandered it. But after this film, you're like, "We've got something special here."
The scene in the beginning where Imhotep is mummified freaked out actor Arnold Vosloo. He had to be in bandages for 4 hours to film the scenes where he's wrapped in and put in his tomb. So they literally did that to him, poor bastard.
That is rough. That is rough.
I remember it. I can't find it in my list, but basically, they had to put a scene in the scene on the boat where Brendan Fraser, Rick O'Connell says, "Wait here, I'll get help," to Omar Jalali
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
was added because otherwise they wouldn't have known how he got off the boat, how the warden got off the boat. So they
Oh, I
had to
see.
add
I
that
see.
scene
Yeah,
just
yeah.
so nobody would go, well, like, how did he get on that side of the river?
Mm-hmm,
Because
mm-hmm.
you don't see him on that side of the river
No, no,
either.
you don't. You don't. And that is one thing we haven't really mentioned. Is it Arnold Vosloo? Is that the name of the actor who
Arnold
plays
Vosloo was the mummy, yeah.
Azimotep? He is also fantastic. And it's sorry, it just seemed like a bit of an oversight that we've not really talked to him. We somehow managed to skip over him.
Because,
He's
like I said, he's mainly CGI, so he is great. But because he's mainly CGI, you kind of don't feel he's the actor.
but he's got this like physicality, like even the scene, to bring it back to the sandstorm, that when you see him kind of doing the motions on the ground and then it
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
being like, there's something about his physicality in the sequence where I'm like, it just looks cool. And he was obviously committed to it. Suppose he had to be shaved like twice a day because he's like a hairy dude. So they just had to
Yeah.
keep shaving him. But I think his physicality in particular lends itself really well to this film because, like you say, he doesn't actually have much to do, but he does feel like a presence in the film, like
Yeah.
start to finish, CG or no CG.
And that's why he's got a bigger impact in The Mummy Returns because he's literally all over that film,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
non-CGI.
And I think, yeah,
So
because they had something special with him as well.
yeah.
Any others, or is that
I know I'm going to leave it there. I think because there's
cool, cool,
fucking
cool?
loads, so I'll just leave
Yeah,
it there.
that's no worries.
Yeah.
Hug to the future section. This is where we ask questions: should it be a remake, a sequel? Don't touch or let it die. So I wouldn't want a direct remake of this because so much of the charm comes from the cast. But like a proper Universal Mummy movie, I'm like, yeah, sure. I know obviously the 2017 Tom Cruise one absolutely didn't work, but I love the original classic Universal movie monsters and all that jazz, and I actually quite like the idea of the Dark Universe, like between bringing those together and having like you have a Mummy movie, you have a Dracula movie, all that stuff. Like on paper, it's a really awesome idea. Yes, they absolutely shat the bed. It was a non-starter. None of the films worked. There were two films, right? There was The Mummy and there was the Dracula one with the Welsh actor whose name
Dracula Untold with was it Reese?
not Reese. What the hell's his? How have I got his name? He's fucking awesome. I always thought he should have
Yeah,
been James Bond. If he was 5-6 years younger, I think he would have been James Bond.
Luke Evans. Why did I say
Luke
Reese? Luke
Evans.
Evans, who
Well,
grew up
this was.
who grew up around the corner from us.
Yeah, and he's a fantastic
Yeah,
actor, and he's great in that film, and it looks amazing. And for some odd reason, it just doesn't work. To me, it was like when I saw the trailer, I was like, "Fuck, this almost looks like a live action Castlevania, like the video game." And I was super looking forward to it. And I watched the film, I was like, "Oh, it's not bad in the same way that The Mummy is bad, but it's
yeah.
certainly not good enough to pick up the slack." So my point being, if you're going to do another Mummy movie, I'm all for another Mummy movie, just not one trying to recreate the I don't want O'Connell, I don't want Evie. Those are in the past, those are attached to those characters I don't want to see again. What I would love to see, if anything, is maybe like a Blumhouse or even better, an A24 take on it. Do
Yeah.
something a little bit arty, maybe, but that's what
So I think we're going to get it. And well done for saying Bloomhouse. I think we're getting it. We are getting at the moment the low key dark universe. I think it's still on the cards.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
had The Invisible Man, directed by Lee Winnell.
You said Man, the Invisible
Man,
Man.
sorry, yeah,
Yeah,
Man.
sorry.
We had The Invisible Man,
Yeah.
directed by Lee Winnell. And
Just
he
sounded a
is
little bit Jamaican. We're getting the Invisible Man. Sorry.
he's currently in production of Wolfman.
Oh, I'm going to start saying that now. You're a fucking asshole. I'm going to say, oh, if you've seen the new Wolfman movie, people will be looking. I'm like, oh, fucking, this is Rob's fault. Oh, never mind. Carry on.
He's currently in production of Wolfman.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think they're trying to get away, like maybe the Mummy will be a little bit later to get the bad taste of Tom Cruise out of your mouth.
But
But
it's the hardest one to do as well, I think.
yeah,
Like,
but I just
especially
think,
if you're emphasizing the Mummy, I think it's,
yeah,
a Dracula movie, a Wolfman movie. They're all like easier. Like, whereas, you can blame the fucking Backstreet Boys with that music video. Like, the Mummy almost became like this ridiculous thing. And I think it's hard to sell it as like a pure horror. But I'd be really interested to see somebody give it like a proper try. And I think that's a great idea, like a lower budget universal monster, kind of
yeah.
quadrilogy, whatever you want to call it.
And
I think that's an awesome idea.
I think it will, like, because I don't know if I'm saying his name wrong, Lee Whannell or Lee Whannell, or I wouldn't know how you say it, but uh, I don't know if he's going to be the one that's doing them all, and I don't even know if it is going to be the Dark Universe. But this is another Blumhouse one, so he already did, like I said, the Invisible Man, which was an updated version with a suit and things like that, and which I thought was really good.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was, yeah. And Wolfman, I think, is going to be set like in present day as well. So I
I'm
think
all for, like, almost universally, horror is almost always better when it's on a lower budget.
yeah,
Almost always. There are
yeah,
very few very good big budget horror films, unless you're going for something really arts, like, and you're bringing in the big actors, like something like The Exorcist, for instance. That would have had more of a budget because it was almost like a marquee movie with like the cast involved. But for the most part, bring the fucking budget down. There's less risk involved, so you can push the boat out further with the horror. That's what we want to see.
yeah. But for my answer for Hug to the Future, if we're just looking at The Mummy, this film, 1999's The Mummy, leave it alone. I think it's great.
Too.
Leave it alone.
Don't touch.
Don't
Do not touch.
don't remake. Like, the character of the Mummy is like anything else. Like you said,
Yeah.
Dracula. Dracula's made forever. They're always going to make Dracula films, like they're always going to make Star Trek films or Star Wars films. It's always going to happen. But leave 1999's The Mummy alone. Don't go back to it. No legacy sequel. None of this shit. Just leave it be. I think that's all you need. I
agree. Like, they've already tried the sequels. They work to one extent or another. This film is fantastic. Leave it be. 100% agree.
Because if they did sequels now for that, you're going to have, like I said, was it The Mummy, and The Mummy goes on holiday to China, as you said. But you're then going to get the fucking Scorpion Kings, which I think we're now on Scorpion Kings 6 or 7.
I don't want to get involved in that. And I don't want to see like an
I'll give you this.
O'Connell.
I've never seen them.
Oh, well, that's something. You got to draw the line somewhere. And apparently, it was with the Scorpion King. Probably helped the fact that the first Scorpion King wasn't very good, and the Scorpion King in the Mummy 2 looked terrible. That's the main thing.
I've never seen any Scorpion King, not even the Rock's one. I've never seen any of them.
I think I've seen it. No, I saw the Rock one. But it was fine, but totally forgettable. In terms of making a change, it's a really lazy answer, but it's the eyebrows. Just because Rachel Weisz is so lovely, those eyebrows really upset me, so I would just sort her eyebrows out. But everything else, I mean, again, the answer is, kind of refine the intro perhaps, or do something with the ending. But I'm going to stick with the eyebrows. That's the thing that really upset me.
Then you're not stepping on my answer, because my answer is a better boss fight at the end.
Yeah, you are right, though. You are right.
You need a better boss fight between O'Connell and Imhotep.
Yep, absolutely. In terms of video games, already mentioned The Mummy, known rather brilliantly in Japan as Hamanatra Ushi no Wareta Sabaku no Miyako, the capital city of the Lost Desert, was released on the Game Boy Color, PlayStation, the first PlayStation, the PlayStation 1, whatever you want to call it, and on PC by Konami, and they were all a bit shit, sadly. The most interesting one was actually the Mummy Remastered, or Demastered specifically. It's an amazing Metroidvania game, but it's based bizarrely on the 2017 version with Tom Cruise. He's not in it, but it's made by Way Forward, and I'm not sure if you ever played a game called Aliens Infestation for the Nintendo DS. But it's based on the Aliens franchise. Yeah. It's a Metroidvania, and legitimately, it is one of the best Aliens games ever made. It still holds up. It's just a shame that it's stuck on the Nintendo DS. And this is another one of those games. It's a brilliant Metroidvania. The pixel art graphics are fantastic. It's just based on the wrong fucking Mummy movie. If you just took the same team and just said, make the Mummy 1999 demastered, it would be fantastic. Where you play as O'Connell instead, perhaps. But yeah, it's a shame. There is a great Mummy game, but it's made for the wrong shitty Mummy movie. So yeah, I'd love to get a demaster of 1999. That would be one option. But we were talking about this before the podcast started. The obvious answer is, sadly, it is Naughty Dog. Naughty Dog are the right answer this week. The Uncharted formula is absolutely perfect for this movie. The idea, the Uncharted already deals with supernatural to a certain extent. You could use Tomb Raider or whatever, but it really, in terms of the writing, the spectacle, all those things, it's Naughty Dog, it's Uncharted. That is the correct answer. And I would be amazed if you said anything differently.
I really wanted to do Naughty Dog, but I've gone elsewhere.
Oh, go for it. Go for it.
I've seriously gone elsewhere. So I really wanted to do, like I said, Naughty Dog is the right answer, but I
Yeah.
didn't want to get you shitting on me again because I just bring up Naughty Dog all the time. I mean, I bring it up for a laugh every now and then, but yeah, you're right.
I
And
mean,
I've
with like,
literally
just be clear, like he's not just doing it for shits and giggles. He was telling me before the podcast that like every 2 years he goes through all of the Uncharted games. You've just finished all four games again. So we are talking about an Uncharted super fan. So he backs up, what he says here.
yeah, but I was thinking about this. I was thinking about the zombie bit of the Mummy,
Mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
where you had the zombie bit, and then they were walking through the streets of Cairo and things like that. And you could take this game that I'm going to say, put it in the 20s,
Mm-hmm.
and have them running through Cairo, and every now and then have the like sandstorm or chasing you. It's Resident Evil 5 by Capcom.
Just moving it from a different part, just going from sub-Saharan Africa up to Northern
Yeah,
Africa, basically.
yeah. I'm
Yeah,
moving
that
into
would work.
1920s and things
Yeah,
like that.
that film is all that video game, if nothing else, like this film, is very orange, incredibly orange. So yeah. And it would probably be less distasteful than I know people have issues with Resident Evil 5, or people just being woke because it's set in Africa. If you go back and play it now, it doesn't quite land. But fundamentally, I really enjoyed Resident Evil 5. So it's a pretty good shot, actually.
Yeah, I think it's a good shout, but
Mhm.
you win. It is definitely
It is that. And I'm
the
not I'm
whole
not shitting on your answer, but that is the correct
Oh,
answer this
it
week.
is. I mean, basically, Nathan Drake is your updated Rick O'Connell in this.
Yeah.
It's
He
yes,
basically is. Yeah. The same kind of like, just on the edge of being an asshole, all that jazz. In terms of scores or recommendations, this one's super easy for me. It's a 4-star film. And when I say yes, it is one of the easiest recommendations we've ever done. Like sometimes me in particular, I fall all over myself in this section. I'm like, oh, maybe you could recommend it to some people. The real essence of this question is, could you recommend this realistically to anyone? Or would you just go up to a random in the street and say, you have to see this film? This is 100% yes. And it's for the reasons we mentioned earlier, the fact that it ticks all the boxes. It's got romance, it's got horror, it's got action, it's got adventure, it's got all of these things, and it does it all well. It's so likable, and even with its faults, they don't detract from what a great film this was in 1999 and remains in 2024. So yeah, 4 stars and 100% recommendable.
yeah, winner chicken dinner. It's a 4-star, and I would recommend it. There's no caveat, there's no if, ands, or buts.
No.
It is a huge just recommend this film.
It's weird because we've done films where we're like, this is a 5-star film, but that doesn't always mean it's recommendable to everyone. It's like,
No.
there are certain 5-star films we love. We're like, you can't just go tell anyone to see this. It's, it could be too niche, whatever. This film is the complete opposite of niche. It's down Main Street, but in the best possible way. So yeah, 4 stars, totally recommendable. Next week, we've been talking about it for a while. This is, I guess, ticks similar boxes in terms of, it's got horror, it's got comedy. I'm not sure if it's got adventure, but part of the reason I'm picking this film is simply because I want an excuse to rewatch it, because I've only seen it once, and it was back when it was released in 1990, and it's Arachnophobia.
Dude, I was gonna say, don't say the name. Give me some hints. Give me some clues.
Oh, I do apologize. I've jumped straight to it. So, no, I've been tiptoeing around this film for a long time. I love John Goodman. I remember really liking this film. I remember it being freaky. Like, who doesn't get freaked out by, like, a spider being in someone's shoe? Just the thought of it freaks people the fuck out. But, like, Jack Daniels is in it as well, right? I'm not making that up.
Yeah.
And
I'm gonna fucking hate this.
Why? Because of spiders or because you don't like the film?
I don't like spiders.
Oh, well, that's good. So, yeah, I'm not sure if that means you're going to really love the film because it'll be effective, or it'll just be an unpleasant watch. Like, if you're, like, scared of clowns and I make you watch, like, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which would be, that'd be an interesting choice to go back to, actually.
Do you know what? People have asked us to do Killer Clowns from Outer Space, so at some point we're going to do it. But
no, we're going to do Arachnophobia.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm with that.
We should do, like, maybe we could do, like, a proper B-movie month where we do, like, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, maybe Ghoulies or something like that. Real B-movie 80s schlock, but stuff that people know, because I feel like those are those films where everyone knows they're not great, but a lot of people, especially if you're into like 80s genre cinema, you all remember those. So maybe we should do like a really schlocky B-movie month.
Yeah, I can't wait to make my wife watch this film because as much as I don't like spiders, fucking hell. Like, so she won't be watching.
I need to do a film where with like sharks, but my wife just terrified of sharks, which I'm like, it's fine to be scared of sharks because one, everyone's afraid of sharks, and two, unless you go out into the sea, you're not going to like run into a shark at the pub. You're going to be fine.
at some point, like 150 plus episodes in, we still haven't done Jaws. From the actor
That's
that did
insane.
Sequest DSV.
Oh, of course, of
So
course.
yeah, but what I love, right, and I know this is shitting on next week's, the director Frank Marshall. What a case of basically shooting your load in one go. He did Arachnophobia. All right, he's only done 4 films. Arachnophobia, Alive,
Oh, Live's a good film.
Congo,
Oh, that's not a great film.
and 8 Below. That Paul Walker, everyone's gonna die in the snow one.
Oh, that got just worse and worse, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, he's got 2 out of 4's not bad. Arachnophobia and I remember Arachnophobia being good, and Alive. I mean, the premise was fantastic, wasn't it? But I remember it being a pretty good.
The premise was Alive. You mean that true story?
Yeah, but it was when you when someone told you, it's like, have you seen that movie Alive? It's like, no, I haven't heard of it. Dude, like a Argentinian rugby team have to like eat their friends' asses because they're gonna die on a mountain. I'm like, I'm fucking in, man. I know that's a little bit reductive. They ate their friends' asses, but
I do love
basically what happened.
Stuck. They didn't eat the leg. They ate an ass cheek.
That's what I'd go for. Well, yeah, like you totally eat that. Anyway, please do join us next week for 1990s Arachnophobia. Anything else to add before I mercifully wrap this podcast up?
No, mate, I'm good. That's made my day.
Awesome. Okay, I've been Liam. He has been Rob, and you have been listening to the Hey Guys podcast. Cheers, guys. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.